This is good.
All right, our judges ready.
Is anyone not ready? The United States federal government should increase its missile defense domain awareness, exploration, and/or development of the RJ reserves the right to fiat and clarify the intent of the plan advantage for freedom of action. Absence your homeland defense adversaries incredibly veto U.S. involvement abroad by going over the top and threatening the homeland, breaking apart hegemony. The seems priority 5 thing homeland defense, also defense is the foundation of everything. Power protection for sport. The fact that you were into the seems homeland defense is able to deploy forces to be decisive, like space foundations to reach how we play the weak game, but can't not even the homeland is able to China and Russia under destruction by Taiwan economy. Ukraine is misrepresented for Russia's vectors for global China and the RJ zero. Military controls Russia and China to take up the risk of homeland's enable nation Russia forces high north domain awareness is key. It's rather the homeland is most vulnerable, triggering imminent fate to conflict. Bullet 23. The art of remaining attractive for Russia and China's nation ground for Texas ability to actual strike to China. Or Russia can support this deal a quick flow that keeps resources and forces the necessary for strike. Doing reverse adversaries and cyclical strikes and homeland the navy is spinning attack army. Aviation routes of the Johannesburg. The state of the attack and access eventually bear with spy. Lieutenant and Alaska domain awareness should be comparity. Now to show homeland the goal of the United States China. Or directly states US. Now that Taiwan rebel states China and Russia recognize this security US force employing the first time both attractive strikes in the homeland. Deterrence collapse causes nuclear war in every theater and breaks down access to risk mitigation back in 25. The world faces converging threats, China, Russia, Iran, and the world without rising powers. Foster, still the dismiss of wars right now, don't assume to cut our sources of wars between Russia, and Ukraine, China, Taiwan, Philippines, ASEAN, Zimbabwe, Japan, and both security exists as well as safe for Iraq, fighting the limits of search refugee security. No response to Afghan resource conflicts in the nuclear not prolific, common and other challenges, deterrence, breakdown, causes extinction, independent of escalation, Kilo War 24, an asteroid by both volcanoes, climate, energy, and ASI, all generating station address humanity needs, resources, climate change, deterrence helps that have in common risks, infrastructure, diversification, worth instruction, scientific personnel, resource assurance, and combat target, in front of best necessary adversaries or revisionist, and have expressed intent to threaten strikes in the U.S. and deliver dangerous weapons, mainly in 25, China and Russia. Missiles is a game changer. They fly low, which is friend missiles, the 2044 Russian connecting missiles of the east coast of the U.S. within range to strike Moscow with respond to Ukraine's allies, making civil weapons after a series worldwide around specifically to do the weapons send warships to Europe, protect Europe, and doing access to the Gulf Strike from actions of the beast made in China's more naval vessels in the U.S. meeting Golden Dome. Trump does not thump. He is committed to hegemony. Chrono 24 dismiss years about admin. Staff of loyalist rebate and ally strong wars. Until Ukraine to respect with focus on peace and China and Iran sees gross results in their country isolation. Trump and the most allies in Europe and Asia close relations to Canada from wars of cables off from Iran and I have a government of allies of all symbols forcing native flag board from I come to the leaders strength of the United Ukraine food that refuses to provide weapons to forces sees far advantage to his air incursions. They were interesting now. Domain awareness is key. Drop 23. UFOs for air source and lunar space are not new portals. Have flown over augmented awareness gap like ability to track your balloons, flying objects from orbit, and integrated detection system with includes platforms from all the replications. Airspace is key. Space capabilities do not dump. Built in 23. Equal satellite includes ranges, weather exchange conditions, all the things that's belonging to especially a chance to cover observation of a squad of radars or balloons. Can be trucks, four missile threats without predictable orbits. Those cause adversary intel gathering, nuclear first strikes, and erodes U.S. Gulf partnerships. Chong 23. Smart plane for sensitive military science suggests China's planning of research rail minimum. Absolutely to fleet and strike home. This pathogens intel for first by equipment. As a noted, she can adopt a sort of friend GCC partnerships. Told to blitz every now and then against America. She can throw more anytime. First strikes to nuclear. Overcorrect for your kind of device against hack by 20 or 30 makes the case for threatening likely. The specific of all rumors being sort of some reason. For nice meals, world launch on geography, emphasis on striking, creating threats, sonics, and cyber defeat or the win Russia. Actually, they know this culture condition of Europe and we want to experience society condition of fear, more nuclear victory, something goes to Russia, China introduces military culture, celebrate SBF, and play nuclear diplomacy, nuclear diplomacy, Chinese Gulf influence causes Middle East prolonged nuclear wars back in 2022, with trying to help Iran, tricking Saudi Arabia, increasing nuclear capabilities, intervening in UAE as well as catalyst conflicts, and process even with what is really good to find people trust among nations, conflicts turning, and you can be real to us, spreading forces like the mountains that in the Middle East, Middle East, new states, control, taking accidents like these, first of all, totally insurance, and civil wars, purchase revolution is possible, and even absent of first strike, incredibly threatening one causes Taiwan to fall, and Chinese EMPs destroys the great 23. Will Trump organize the Yemen bomb research that any Chinese and Chinese men on these first articles will just such a threat attack and introduce the intent of China to the good means of delivering a nuclear balloon grid collapse causes 16 should take over all 21 civilizations plus nuclear critical info about whatever is well centered as well chain so resisting false russell water precipitate capacity to CI people these things release and services have they found low cost and distributed US to destroy deploy time prevent existential risks Taiwan invasion causes a litany of existential risks and interest totalitarian world governance Eastern 23 fall offshore one breaking alliance system and UN nuclear arms wrestling with rapidly spiral Germany and computer nuclear rotating ships secret presence nuclear be evolving over the Venezuela with escalation war India would experience our solar will involve nuclear arms forces of Russian forces fractured neighborhoods by public dictatorships virtual by the CCP with totalitarian governance totalitarian world governance causes nuclear wars and extinction Battlefield 23 totalitarian states world war less cooperative in progress and democratic states totalitarian battle forecasting risks major extinction wars this time the work to the public for totalitarian precise research chance of WG all risks from cooperation such as dynamics of climate change AR technology politics or risk of locking in such as AGI space, local sectors surveillance, totalitarian would risk of extinction, totalitarianism outweighs extinctionism as risk of 24 totalitarianism done for the funds of the suffering would, and the ability to suffer little number of worse than extinction and air incursions to destroy U.S. credibility, resolve war with China, risk of 23, we've not had a robust air defense of the Chinese know that it is a big attempt to act like nuclear army are going to be good for faster our problems more, the war prestige lost to it, get Roman actual forces sending assets like Korea, yes, Alaska, and RJ, U.S. China war causes extinction, Sierra 23, which war destruction, we're going to be unprecedented disaster, like with very excessive blood, grow liberty, the biggest, foundation, even worse, Asian people, there's no question, how many cross-war, humanity, combat, ability, AI, resolve, self-war in every hotspot, and other existential risks, means 21, China, Russia, Iran, Pakistan, India, and Israel, UK, and France, transport, border, I feel all change relative perception, we this China's pushing for force into saying through nuclear change, no go, I guess the Japanese are running, I think Israeli cities, Sea, Pakistan, books of materials, no reason between Pakistan and India, maritime things, the one factor will be back, so this has been career use resulting in air incursions causing disease from above and weather organization, Germany 23, with the previous position, orders and during disease, weather modification, visual China plans to expand, remake, and cover the country will use uses include fatal removes efforts to seek constitution for floods, mudslides, bioweapons, cause extinction, walls 20, deliver African entry to counters to spread, cancer, aspirating to equip with red trees, let us off the planetary viruses, the existential threat, weather weaponization, cause of future war, appear number 19, working religious suits, which communists, right for which impossible, as well, whatever, aspirates, would have cause feeling into Western structure, nuclear war, adding climate wars, advantage trees, Golden Dome, Trump announced an Iron Dome for America, now relabeled the Golden Dome, homeland missile defense, but it will be ineffective without Arctic defense upgrades, Secure 25, Trump signed, a system acting for Arctic and Alaska, with this information concentrated on U.S. clearance for American defense of the Arctic, the lack of use to these effective systems, or they can go intense of the Arctic's critical portion of the Arctic, the future Arctic system, the essential sources of info about the forming of the Arctic, the Greenland, and GAP successfully operationalizing the Golden Dome and keep coercing arms control from adversaries, Citizen 25, the Golden Dome would affect arms control days after Trump said the UV didn't even start arms control with China, Russia will develop raise, and the British communication hopes of the part of the deal, arms control stops, existential nuclear war bans, Fox, go to November 25, nuclear weapons abuse is the ad Trump's restraint, nuclear extension of arms trying started out in 2026, September, different conditions, significantly new dome system, negotiating U.S. Bush and Indian Fox, even clear application reason high may not given influence Trump exercises predicted, so the effective Fox causes Indo-China arms racing extinction, limit 21, bridging Fox can never spend a vector missile, races and a basic nuclear missile arose for the bridging action reaction cycle, and the European control which are observed not utilities of the accelerated program, not bridging for peace and an effective Golden Dome knocks out accidental foreign launches and stops directed energy attacks on the 25 Trump's beautiful Golden Dome to direct the war from protect the free world from attacks during Cold War, with limited efforts to defend ballistic missiles from against accidental launch Russia, trying to innovate around to new defensive capabilities, undo evolving Texas food directed energy defenses, foreign nuclear control failure is inevitable, try or die for missile defense, 222 nuclear annihilation, can be achieved with radical research and risk of change, lack of complicated states, breaking conventional nuclear surveillance, conflict, press government states, etc. As the risks of malfunction road, new world Jim Scott, risk of terror, found out to speech, to dispute Russia began escalating to de-escalate China, achieving these operations to try Pakistan, growing with DPRK, run missile testing, and adversary directed energy attacks, cause extinction from laser winter, Monte 21, China, reinforces super World War II, taking violence, Russia, looking to ventilate aggression, our neighbors trying to say peace, advertising, and trying to see laser attacks from laser windows, and the of our project, smoke powers on the same first, giving arrest, winter, just dangerous, nuclear, out of the Legion extinction, Golden Dome, also ensures satellite agreements, solves Scout, and nuclear hotlines, and solve all wars, with 25, supposed to see stabilizing, that will destroy missiles, James cyber attacks, which is also inspects, repeat these, could easily be strong capture, destroyed rivals, assets, no norms, and super message from high Russia, and trying to be code economy, introduce hotlines, nuclear control, Golden Dome, that's an opportunity, no name, too many policy options.
Are you good?
Yes.
Okay. What is the incentive for Russia and China to launch a first strike against the U.S.?
The first strike could succeed. Our evidence indicates that the U.S. is counterforce vulnerable. Our prior evidence says that the majority of America's nukes are concentrated in subs, in bomber bases that could be wiped out in a first strike. Our second thing, even threatening a first strike can carry enormous advantages.
I want to talk about this subs and bombers thing. How do they find out where our subs and bombers are?
The extremely basic monitoring capabilities, like satellite, overhead imagery, etc., all states have those.
Okay, missile defense is mostly made against rogue states like North Korea and Iran. How does the plan create a credible blanket against other nuclear threats?
We think other nuclear threats could be solved by the plan. For example, like if any of those adversaries threatened a tactical nuclear strike, we do think that beefed up missile defense would be able to stop that.
Okay, your polling evidence says that competing kill chains against nuclear missiles is, quote, notoriously difficult. How does improving awareness overcome the gap in interceptor quality?
Well, our evidence indicates that the most vulnerable path of the United States is the Arctic, plus sensors would shore up America's ability to test its interceptors in contested environments.
Okay, the air incursion advantage. Every internal link card about the danger of UFOs is from February 2023. This was an effective military tactic. Why would rogue balloons be more pervasive in conflict?
It has only been 2 years since then. that was at best a trial run. It is like the normalcy fallacy 101 to say it happened 2 years ago, therefore it'll never be dangerous again.
Okay.
They also could, here's the other premise of the advantage, they could be using balloons against us that we don't know about because we don't have effective reconnaissance.
The Chinese spy balloon flew across the entirety of the U.S. and was shot down in the East Coast. Political inertia destroyed response. People thought it was a weather balloon. How does simply detecting more mean that we stop these threats?
Well, having better intel detection capabilities better enables us to catch balloons and then find out whether they are weather balloons or not. Obviously, it did flow over the United States, but I believe it came in through the Arctic, or through the high north.
It came through the southern part of Alaska. Your first card for arms control internally says that Trump wants it to restrain allies, or adversaries. How do you know that those adversaries would actually engage in reduction?
Our evidence, the line right after that says that a golden dome would, quote, raise the incentive for both to engage.
Okay. S-risk's impact, it says that if a regime were to maintain its grip on power for centuries or millennia, we would cause an S-risk. How does your impact get to centuries or millennia?
Our Belfield evidence suggests that totalitarian dominance would have a significant risk of lock-in. So that the stuff that says AGI, space, life extension, surveillance, that could artificially prolong the lifespan of regimes.
Okay, thank you.
Why don't you guys add? Thank you, Brian.
Of course.
The order is 2 off, the freedom of action advantage, the weather balloons advantage, and then the golden dome advantage.
It's called air.
Oh, sorry, I read that wrong.
It's like,
Don't worry about it.
okay.
Is it recording this?
Yeah.
It's recording me?
It's above.
Oh, interesting.
I think it's got like your head.
No, it has, it's just the screen.
Oh, it's
Well, it might be your head. Oh, we don't know.
That's fine.
Okay,
It does not
okay.
matter. Yeah, I'll be fine.
I need 2 sheets of paper.
Yeah.
Three, two, one. Okay, so. All right. Everyone should have had their 5 pieces of paper already, yeah? So we've got, we're ready? 2 off, 1, 2, 3.
Yep. John and Jeremy, are you both good? Sweet. First is the counterplan. The United States federal government should permanently divest from and dismantle its ballistic missile defense capabilities, including domain awareness for missile defense and no offense GMDs ineffective and worthless soccer in February 22. After 20 years of putting GMDs in Dow has been tested 20 times. I mean, under ideas condition, only 50% succeeded. This for keeping the rather than the sense that would track ICBM. This occurs daytime and favorable weather. Cause without brightness and questioning utility has yet to build the kill vehicle. Vehicles played by bad engineering. The contractor used off-the-shelf hardware to all secure being expected that index iteration is not ready until the late 2020s. High altitude detonation outside the range of GMD with ionized radar tracking. Declension made insurmountables as such as lightweight balloons. No evidence GMD overcomes this culture exists within missile defense that tolerates model not that there is no solution and reject that evidence epistemically fossil 10. Data shows SM3 and GMD will not hit warheads. 10 has at slow speed. 9 the warhead not destroyed. MDA report has successful misleading omission system according to testimony. 96% interception rate was shown to be 0. Evidence of performance about BMDs need to be taken with caution. And yes, they got the clash fairness plus no outboard and they flex out ways. Second off, is the dispatch. The possibility of BMD expansion against strategic stability, Gomez 19. Restraints on missile defense can prevent erosion of nuclear stability with great powers expanding on wind defense really deep in Russia and Chinese concerns that U.S. is building with defense to make their nuclear arsenals ineffective would encourage counter moves and increase risk of nuclear war setting and cap would not be sufficient. Complete divestment in homeland. The defense would entail dismantling all interceptors, abandoning research on defense is going to divestment of strong steel competitors that the U.S. is now wishing to negate their arsenals. And missile defense destroys nuclear stability, causes extinction, or risk arms race, nuclearization of space, and drives adversaries against the United States. Include 25. The security on flex all powers develops defenses those make me feel less safe around the escalate toward release everybody that the U.S. faces nuclear Russia, China, no kill Iran, Pakistan, they can collude an attack on the U.S. overwhelming any defense system by numbers in space Russia are preparing to nuke up there, then those who take out American interceptors, golden dome will jeopardize stability, and now to the first advantage freedom of action. First, war deterrence costs are inevitable. These theses can testify the strategic stability gain. 2, hedge fails, but it's rooted by distance and interest asymmetry with time 24. The volume of hedge opposed and a little more predominantly caused to be approved the story by the least wealthy societies on the planet. While U.S. military supremacy will overcome geography, advance the military tech benefit events more natural to create asymmetry between nations' populations and the U.S. regional powers can counter the U.S. at low cost, and deterrence breakdown modulus ridiculous no car trashers, ASI, nanotech, volcanoes coming down, or how they cause extinction. I serve they won't, and China's rise is motivated by status. Big diagnosing was inherently prohibitionist state needed containment makes them more aggressive and causes war in Marine 19. China's view of international order connected century humiliation of war resource and national legitimate the CCP Act. The actions toward China are viewed as unjust within which any attempt to limit Chinese policy as misrecognition, national humiliation, understood to be an exceptional threat, represent a symbolic threat, national rejuvenation promises restore status, China's rise is inevitable, containment based on revision intentions, producing a self-fulfilling prophecy, more threat China will feel, they respond aggressively to deterrent strategies in North China recognition needs exacerbating security and construct China's unpeaceful rise, and Trump advocated American leadership $25. The U.S. led order died with Trump, Ukraine and Taiwan, Ukraine to impose terror threats, retake Panama, observe Canada and Greenland, envisions a return to power politics, Trump sees few interests outside the West, consider alliances to train on the treasury, Trump denounced his allies, they have hailed food and energy, he blames Zelensky for Ukraine, questioned NATO and threatened to withdraw from SOCO, Trump's threats mark openly course order which economic intimidation replaces trade and co-op, Beijing and Moscow inflame the world's resentment of Trump, these efforts will ramp up as Trump turns to threats. Trump does not offer opportunities, he demands concession. Asian and European allies will try to please Trump, but he will not take the mantle of leadership. Next is air incursions. First, China's spy balloon was over the Arctic. It was in southern Alaska. Look at the map. Next, what's it called? Next, not solved by the plan, which only says empty domain awareness, and it makes no sense that other countries would threaten to strike the U.S. Hussey 23. Russia and China and the U.S. have enough retaliatory words to obliterate some strange treason, even though this nuclear fact of life in a crisis makes it make sense for Russia and China to strike out. Giving suicide to strike that would involve nearly 1,000 warheads to all 450 and 450 silos and 45 launchers. Ludicrous and satellites thumped 23. China's spy balloon was headed over Montana missile fields, but they had only limited volume until China could attain by other tech such as satellites and no problem, even if no impact, no 20. The reason to avoid alarmism, Prolim has been slow, weapons convey little advantage. Prolim has been benign, dozens of capable countries that consider arsenals that few have done so huge number that even consider the opportunity to man renunciation, nukes, reinforcements, prestige, ejections, predictions, cascades, to produce. Faulty Prolim has been slow, leaders have issued weapons are dangerous, costly, and rally neighbors' weapons have been exceedingly difficult to attain. Countries which have proliferated have quietly kept them in storage. There has never been a compelling reason to use weapons, and no impact is taking Taiwan. China will be able to aggress elsewhere, and the U.S. power remains strong and force democracy elsewhere. Occupying Taiwan, not a large transfer, but consuming invasion of difficult restraining forces of China require a problem. Holding on subject with diverse resources, highly spring-loaded for adventures. The barriers remain distance and access to outrageous cost, and democracies are thumbed by Trump to war on ICT executive, and democracies fail resolving existential risk. Colony 18. Due to the effective addressing climate as well as pollution by new ways for cyber, financial, inequality, debt, migration, immigration, terrorists, to citizens are frustrated war worlds is dominated by partisan interest, rent seekers, detached and unresponsive preferences, fail to be translated into policy, and knowing these they cause recouncil, disincentivize, and great damage is reversible. Labor 23. The grid is extremely reliable. Towers have been hardy against winds, lenders, designs to the line sharp way, then tracking down the loophole. We don't get long duration outside, putting these that allows to recover quickly. The grid is actually made up of 3 regions. There's a problem in the west. Each should be fine. The issue that will never actually cascade black. They wouldn't go beyond these individual grids. And I'll try to worry. Extinction outweighs asterisk plus is not unique to power distributions everywhere, and no China war adventures of 24. In Asian beats rails, reasons are nuclear insurance, now security, military spending of the U.S. and all supports that favor Joe's hedge like the Chinese intent to launch aggression illustrated by the representing GDs on military geography, and that day any war breaks out, China's overseas trade stops, of course, Chinese people hiding, Chinese carriers would have a hard time defending themselves, warships are vulnerable even in coastal waters, handful of Ukrainian missiles, truck Russian warships, China's going to be used as too small, and super diseases can't cause extinction. Doors at 23. When you're to pull this to virus, you need to reach everyone. Antarctic station ships, nuclear stuff, you have virus uncontacted, astronauts, you need a virus that was undetectable. The virus you need to be transmitted to every human on the planet. Avoid respirators and maintain China's invincibility through mutation, killing about 99%. But no matter their genetic, you need to evade this how do you transmit a virus to someone who doesn't leave the house, and China will deploy geoengineering on 23. China's history of weather modification, however, China's published shown more interest in afforestation and reluctance to work SRM in addition to political challenges and engaging with India and Australia. China has another agreement. China climate is a problem to mobilize and have the less dangerous interventions. Third advantage going down. First turn, space arms control fails and causes worse instability. Break 22. Arms control will shape the direction rather than prevent arms race. Any agreement will be less comprehensive. States will develop weapons that fall outside jurisdiction. Agreement increases tendency technology. So technologies forcing a problem. Restriction will deadly force nations to integrate infrastructure, furthering dual use, and incentivize weaponization, pursuing detriment prevention, relative competitiveness, response to reduce FG willingness to improvements, resiliency, and survivability, and nuclear cuts makes arsenal vulnerable to conventional counterforcing nuclear war on Libra 19. Nuclear cuts undermine deterrence engines, improve weapon accuracy, and sensing nuclear cuts reduce the number of targets attacked, most destroyed, and exacerbated by conventional strike missile events, cyber tech developments are so integral to conventional war in modern society that it would be impossible to halt potential victims to seek escape vulnerability, triggering incentives to strike preemptively nuclear content, so that are no longer compatible, small arsenals more vulnerable, and no Indian China War Sting 20, assigning Indian war zone like the risk of redemption are not high fiber agreements to address disputes over the LAC, provide motor shop right for delineation as well as scope commitments to retain, return to in case of escalation, they prove by the fact that during the 60-day stand-up and Bulldog, advertising the Doppel crisis of the two already have mechanisms to resolve such situations easily. The ability of both governments to control national media meant that no domestic pressure for retaliatory tolerance and be on both sides claim victories in diffuse situation and deterrence is stable internationally. Deterrence 11. There's cost of deterrence and the risk of mechanical accident. However, no inflation taking place in 7 years for nation guarantees safety are more robust today. The probability of listening to the control deterrence rests on human reasoning, but it does not take a lot to work. The thing that we have been lucky is unverifiable by contrast. Statistical studies show that possession of problems reduce probability of war punches here. At least once inside Cuban crisis, not any stable weapons have been really close to deploy and create the infant for most of Berlin, KO, Surin, North the National or South Asia, Able Archer, Gulf War, or Asian crisis of 99 to 2002. Emphasizes war games show possessors were reluctant to use nuclear strikes. So regulations never led president to destroy it. No one has to be confirmed by two different centers for a conference and decided that the authorities should be contacted. Tens of thousands of men in charge of nuclear weapons have taken greater care than us. Situations involving human nature, complex mechanical system, and leisure defense fails. But I was going to read 18. Leisure encourages atmospheric efforts that destroy the beam, water, dust, and pollution, all absorbed, and all absorbed with the leisure weapons to be effective missile defense. Hardly think shielding, constructing the missile skin, and it can only. Part part there, uncontrolled fails. If adversaries are revisionists, they've known something to come to the table. If they're not, every advantage is nonsense because they won't start over. Cool, I'm good.
Okay. Status of the off.
Jared, what's the status?
I believe it's dispositional.
Most historians agree that at various points in history, sorry, I'm talking about the VA now, America has had a disarming first strike capability versus the Soviets, the Chinese, and the North Koreans. Why have none of those states during those windows used nukes against the U.S.?
I'm confused kind of by the question.
Okay,
I think that we have a strong enough second strike capability, which means BMDs are useless.
Okay.
And having BMDs makes strategic stability worse.
Okay. So your argument, the reason why it makes stability worse is because it gives America a potential disarming first strike capability. If America has had that capability at various points in history, why no escalation?
Jared, you take it over.
Importantly, BMD eliminates the prospect of mutual vulnerability.
Okay,
So other countries do not have a credible second strike
to
against the
answer
U.S.
this question. My next one. Let's suppose a state fears for the integrity of its arsenal because of missile defense. They might fear America could first strike them. Why would that state use a nuclear weapon?
Well, we've said that BMD gets rid of mutual vulnerability, which means that states fear and have use or lose it pressures because they think that BMD makes their nuclear weapons obsolete.
Okay, so that's kind of our argument, right? If a state fears disarming first
Yes.
strike, they think, oh, America might nuke us.
Yes.
What is their incentive?
Therefore, they use or lose it because they do not want to lose their weapons due to fear of a credible disarming first strike. So they'll
Okay.
use it because they have a fear of
So
losing
they're,
it.
they're afraid of a nuclear war, and so they start a nuclear war. How does that make sense?
Jared?
They're
I mean,
afraid
they
of-
was afraid.
They're afraid of the end of their regime. They nuke the U.S.'s command and control systems to prevent a larger nuclear war from starting.
So they hope that they can wipe out a large portion of our nuclear system.
I certainly think China and Russia have the capacity to. Our evidence also specifies that they could collude with the other powers such as North Korea, Pakistan, Russia, and also they can help Iran develop nuclear weapons. I mean, it just makes the argument that there is a massive amount of countries that can overwhelm all defenses.
If BMD is ineffective, why is it provocative?
I'm confused. The AF increases and makes BMD, particularly in areas where Russia feels already threatened by America, particularly where they have their nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
So this is obviously threatening to Russia because it appears that America is trying to get rid of mutual vulnerability. And it takes away Russia's only seemingly strategic advantage.
How do we know Russian or Chinese nuclear bombs attributable to the U.S.?
Well, we do know that Russia has the most nuclear weapons in the world, so we do think that they have the capacity to.
But how do we know it's because of us?
What was the question? Sorry.
How do we know it's because of us?
How do we know it's because of us? Particularly, Russia feels that they have a strategic advantage in the high north. The app removes that, which destroys mutual vulnerability, which puts Russia under use it or lose it pressures, which forces them to use their nuclear weapons.
Hold on, the reason we're doing them after the 2AC is because the 2AC is ready, right?
Opponents, have you all received the speech document?
I actually have not. Okay, I haven't refreshed my Gmail, so.
I have received the speech document.
I have also received the speech document.
Lena. Okay. The order is advantage 1, freedom of action. Advantage 2, air incursions, not weather balloons. Advantage 3, golden dome. The counter plan. The disadvantage. One more time. Advantage 1, advantage 2, advantage 3, counter plan. Dissat. Is anybody not ready? Okay. Deterrence collapse is now 1 proportionality. In the event of a coercive threat, the U.S. has no choice but to dump the arsenal or concede 2 domain gaps. Adversaries do not have to fear retaliation if they have an auto veto against the U.S. Yes, hedge impact 1. Post 9/11 asymmetry is an argument. Homeland weakness enabled Al-Qaeda success. 2. Geography and distance are unwarranted and only problems if adversaries can force the U.S. to back down across the pond. Yes, lodulus. I assert they will cause extinction because the 2AR speaks last. We auto win. Status theory has zero support. Revisionism disproves it. And unipolarity satiates combination through deterrence. Words of any might now scout SAT stat seekers. Let self-determinants concede recent belligerents is filled to accompany by stats now like space and appearance slowly taking forever policy to try to convince Beijing of Moscow of futility concepts defeating China, Russia, Iran, and NOCO are revisionist. 1. Missile tests. Iran in the Gulf of America. Russia off California. China off Taiwan demonstrates an intent to redraw the map. 2. Air incursions violating sovereign airspace contravenes the LAO. 3. Military spending. Chinese defense to GDP ratio outpaces the U.S. No Trumper. 1. Tough love strengthens deterrence via defense spending. 2. Iran proves Trump will defend Taiwan and Ukraine despite tariffs or steamrolling sovereignty. It's the 12-day war. Advantage 2. Yes, internal link, Southern Alaska is the Arctic. Should have listened to Harris's topic lecture. Radar stable quick detection so future balloons can evade BMD. It solves. Retaliation fails. 1. The U.S. is counterforce vulnerable, destroying bombers on bases, and subs and ports can neutralize retaliation. That's pride. 2. BMD is key. They're more credible. And the U.S. cannot intervene with other capabilities. Home protection costs 2 for 23. U.S. must defense unique for provision of nuclear weapons like investment deployed limits 100%. Adversaries no reason to doubt U.S. are trying to defend someone. Adversary may defense itself. U.S. without deploy nuclear arms or conventional campaign fear escalation. Missed defense stable. Wide away response to this defensive element. Principally the U.S. has dropped surveillance radar suicide. 3. Perception. Even if they're right about retaliation, they're wrong. China believes it. Oberg and Heinrichs 19 is error which lack evidence of discretion. China can attack U.S. as a neutralize U.S. capability to interfere in larger war. China might rationalize U.S. can simply decide to sue for peace or that U.S. will individual. It is possible, however, U.S. is long to U.S. to preserve the rights civil matters to adversaries release to do sending Chinese misconduct that result in disaster common with U.S. as reduced missiles that when powerful deterrence 4 sponge fails. BMD is key to coercion deterrence without which adversaries will sleepwalk towards war. Cost 2. If an adversary struck the hallway for coercion, U.S. response to deficit with that will whole company cannot stop an attack, but certainly cannot guarantee confident and with U.S. response to confirmation of security adversaries decision-making look at U.S. Navy responsible. No matter how significant will actually be assumption instead of cost U.S. Navy distressing of those satellites do not thump. They are vulnerable to cloud cover and Earth orbit, unlike balloons. Concede no prolif impact. Weapon procurement is slow, arrow prone, and foreign leaders refuse to use them. That takes out the strategic stability impact. Port is an AVCAR and assumes American support, which China can tamp down by threatening the homeland. Also neutralizes distance and cost to China. ICE and unitary executive are democracy enhancing since Trump won. Democracy succeed. Lobbying is pro-democracy. Money is speech, and they are net better than authoritarians. Lethargic decision-making enables better informed crisis response. Cross-supply are retaliation answers from above. Grid damage is overcome by continent spanning nuclear EMPs, which Lambert doesn't assume. It hits all transmission regions. Totalitarians aren't embedded enough yet to cause the impact of will be post-Taiwan invasion. Yes, China war nuclear deterrence. It's undermined by lack of EMP, which also inhibits forced mobilization and neutralizes GDP. The defense spending ratios that circumvents trade blowback by China winning a one-day war against America. Yes, bioweapons impact. Subs and doomsday preppers still need to contact society. Engineering overcomes the transmission. Lethality trade-off. Yes, Chinese engineering gets a huge strategic advantage against the U.S. in phase 3. No arms control turn. 1. The New Start Treaty and ABM thump. 2. The plan solved. Trump will restart Golden Dome if countries cheat or evade limitations. 3. No use or lose it strikes. Current clause 21. Use or lose rest of the contribution doesn't provide much of the use really federal these missions cover use over technology because ready to control not be that much of the load activate missiles. If bridge ship or threats intention launch is not the lunar response. 4. Miscount is myth shocking to miscalculation. Assume ignorance bad faith or change to obvious judgment and storage over to be sad that there were ignorance across 80 years incorporated Soviet arsenals less developed there have been few accidents and not led to escalation. Case studies find no crime examples until study from 400 CE to 1985 after those completes. 5. No uniqueness for counterforcing, which is pry on advantage. 2. Concede. No India-China war concede to twice. Yes, lasers impact. 1. No uniqueness. Golden Dome comes now, which triggers their offense without solving the case. 2. Tech measures solve weather and countermeasures that will be on the count 1. We agree arms control fails now. We can coerce them into agreement that solves both the TA and all wars ever through coerced co-op with U.S. China only says no if U.S. is no bargaining chip. The wars concede China's divisions. Uniqueness count 1. Perm, do both. Perm, do the counterplan. Permutation, do the plan and abolish all missile defense interceptors and kill vehicles. It's a winner. All their link evidence is about PMT, not radars. The text is in the document. They need to win the uniqueness counterplan to beat the TA. Otherwise, interceptors already exist and thumb. PMT succeeds. 1. Modernization solved. 2022. Duty fighters and GD insured defending the United States including anti-idol with illegal vehicles. Also, the groups for space and land interception tracking. Including missiles provide discrimination of ballistic episode threats. 2. It's irrelevant. Missile defense is political. Deterrent 2022 defense out of launch program project out damage to war planning missile strikes and limited defense making the compatibility to projecting the defensive defense of rotate. Missiles defense rights to the body commercial accuracy test will be well by threatening limited strikes. 3. Countermeasures fail costs 22. Countermeasures flow chasing except for the 100% includes our jamming for the node after LD to countermeasures optimized at each stage of flight. The main impact range to weight layer missile defense can increase fidelity liability 3 layers of defense and traffic percentage chance for 7% chance to destroy the warhead since the task countermeasure road after different collecting both like the more effective the consequence of an accuracy on the side of the rest of the defense which will increase the terrain countermeasures easily on paper but less to implement entry challenges or substantial range accuracy and elimination gain confidence. 4. Epistemology wrong timer 16. Myth FDA scripts test about subject oversight FDA so which range sensing with intense reading of the abilities most likely USC MTED OTED and 4 defense committees and GAO flight testing for operation producer to provide the before the field of the disadvantage. 1. No link. A. Empirics. Decades of BMD buildup has not caused extinction. 2. Nuclear buildups are not in reaction to U.S. missile defense. Also, and Super 23. Responsible defense when brought the arms to comment that arms reaction lies in the organization U.S. improvements. Defense center of the ADM in 2002 with Russia got arms destroyed that period. Russia engaged multiple treaties knowing would not limit use defense missile defense not linked to Russian reactions. When Russia produced the nuclear reaction, it was not the video decade ago. There else, I don't think whether virtual arms excluded. Same withdrawal does not lose the these immediate initial layout threats. China's force again going all once actual action would operate to us for the purpose of missile defense in China react to similar manner said China made short range to internal change rather than reaction. No impact. 1. Cross apply. No use it or lose it strikes from advantage. 3. 2. Even if missile defense makes a first strike easier, deterrence will hold consequences. 3. Counter argument was defense by smart China Russian implicit within this defense enable U.S. first strike guard may appear that way in each capital requiring preemptive action. There was little evidence to support this. U.S.'s first strike against Soviet Union does not choose to employ Chinese limited deterrence in the shadow of U.S. first strike and did not take action. Any change in capability is measured in decades, making need for sudden war unfounded the notion Russia or China would first strike because if you're going second to this would be irrational to strike and power this power force to be the case for the U.S. 3. No space nuclearization. It's long-term threat inflation and deterrence. Jack's Holdings 24. Nukes in space shouldn't panic. The war suggests threats not imminent. There is no way to contain without deterring the nature of space. Nuclear war not suggests great need for concern. This is not new development, but rather based for nuclear deterrence strategy known as MAT. 4. The plan solves the disadvantage. Cooperative nuclear attacks via a missile shield over the continental U.S. The rationality is to have argument, interest, asymmetry, and conventional inferiority when China uses the nuclear theory of victory. Peters for 3. Current administration may be a coercion campaign during this case as a common Chinese solutions believe U.S. will not responsibility to use particularly against the military. Such may or may not be true, but Chinese solution will proceed decisions rational if used with no civilian effect is less enough for chance for rationality of a retaliatory response. China no longer maintains no pursuit given China's expansion of its strategic capabilities and encouragement to Chinese and Taiwanese era China. The use of nuclear employment is rational and a common with U.S. Chinese leadership except for risk of the pressure to win. Beijing believes any coalition to defend Taiwan or middle police. U.S. is not willing to fight a major war for Taiwan about to deal with begins invasion of the U.S. will oppose the military force in this and produce companies very strengthening China pressure to attempt to win a conflict with cost now. China believes in the U.S. investment. China believes in and engage limited change. Far from home where states are exponential, Beijing believes fear of war as the will deter president after first use nuclear deployment given China's superiority and theory of the system. This is correct because U.S. United States are well over Taiwan. China lives in and complain without American response to Chinese use. There is a vigorous move in American way to respond to tense Lincoln. It may sound like the feeling to retake its potential leadership believes Taiwan's vital interest they can not lose otherwise CCP fears regime instability. The regime may deem nuclear use less risky than defeat by Americans. Okay, back to the counterpoint. BMD is empirically successful at Rubicon 20. Even if GD only has 6% intercept success, the rate is cumulative of all live fire test conjugate police, however, not every test designed to hit their target sum, or the study rocket engines behave during missiles, and so forth. This positionality is a voting issue because we need to tie the app to a single advocacy throughout the entire debate, which destroys fairness and app predictability.
Are you good, John?
Do you want that card?
Yeah. I guess, yeah.
Here, take away. EC, do you need to see this card?
Very simple.
Did you do? Yeah, I'm sitting. I was wondering that. Oh, yeah. This, you need to change the highlighting for it.
Oh,
That-
word.
that's-
No, it's cool. I changed it in the document.
No, but it's in the body.
Oh, okay.
But it's the
No, that's,
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm ready for cross-examination.
Thank you, John. So my first question is about the cost of super evidence. It seems to indicate that in 2014 and 2001, Russia did not react to American arms races. How so does this kind of hold up given current climate, current posturing? It seems to rely upon old historical data about people that don't really do much now, or have changed their minds.
So because nuclear weapons are the ultimate backstop in a conflict, it does not matter if there is more tension between the US and Russia today because nothing about our nuclear systems have changed.
Do you think that sort of assumes the argument that Russia has a strategic advantage in the Arctic that the AF is attempting to eliminate? How does how does the AF sort of, I guess, what does your evidence indicate?
Yeah, so the AF eliminates a Russian advantage in the Arctic in the same way the Reagan administration eliminated a strategic advantage of the Soviet Union by modernizing our nuclear arsenal. And we're all still here.
Well, I guess it's just different regimes, particularly Putin, have been seen as more of a risk taker, given his A, threats, and B, also his willingness. I guess getting rid of and sort of nullifying the entirety of the Russian nuclear arsenal would almost certainly provoke a reaction. I guess, why is history indicative of that?
Because at previous points in history, the US has also been able to neutralize Russia's nuclear arsenal, and yet we have not had a nuclear war.
My next question is going to be on the Holdings 24 evidence. It indicates that Russian nukes don't exist. It cites official reports, but I'm not exactly sure what official reports these are. How so is Russia behind on the space nukes race?
Like space nuclear weapons?
Yeah.
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, Russia said, we're going to put a nuclear weapon in space, and we have plans to do this.
Mhm.
Since that time, our article was written that indicates they have not done so, they do not plan to do so, and all of the previous intelligence was faked to indicate that they might.
Next, on the Peters evidence, I wonder what sort of interest, asymmetry, and conventional inferiority. I believe that China does have a credible second strike, given that they have local ICBMs.
I don't think so.
That is just objectively true. They have local ICBMs that they can move around. How
The
so
US
does this,
knows
like, your
where
evidence
they
sort
are.
of like assume that?
The US knows where those mobile ICBMs are.
So that you have just not substantiated that with evidence. Could you like maybe indicate where your card says that, or like what sort of? I guess like where does that come from?
I mean, you ain't got a card, I ain't got a card.
Well, sure, whatever. My next question is going to be about the what is that? The plan set out cooperative nuclear attacks via missile shield. I guess how so? BMD is not good. We've read evidence that says it fails 90% of the time. How does it solve that?
Classic cross-ex mistake. I'm going to disagree with the premise. BMD does work.
Okay.
We're gonna take a pause.
I'm gonna take negative prep for.
Okay, yeah. They're gonna take negative prep. The 2 hasn't been sent. Okay. Okay. Is this working? This isn't really working. No different. Okay. We were close. I can talk loudly. Okay, so we've got some questions, all right? We have all been paying attention. Yes? Yes. All right. John made 3 perms on the counter plan. John said permutation, do both. Permutation, do the counter plan. What was the 3rd one where he said a lot of words after it? Yes.
Come on.
Nope, he did not say perm do the plan and then the counter plan. Yes. works. Why does this answer the counterplan? Yeah, back there. The counterplan gets rid of BMD. If BMD works, why would we get rid of it? Okay. Who cut the word epistemology? All right. Do we usually hear the word epistemology in a counterplan dissent debate? No. What is epistemology referring to? Where do we first see it? So, first question, where do we first see it? Yeah. Yes, reject evidence epistemology. Where do they say this? Yep, on the counterplan debate. Perfect. So, what is the argument? Why do we hear epistemology here? Yeah, in the back.
You're saying that the NDA, the evidence has lied in the past, but the lie is not the lie is supposed to be.
Is it that the evidence specifically has lied in the past? Like this source?
Or not because this was specifically, but like, there's false statistics on this one.
Sure. So John reads a card, it's number 4, where he's like, indicts of epistemology are wrong. What is he supporting there? What is he like, what argument is he making?
Stop it when step 5. Does it pass?
Someone, yeah, cool. The AF science is good. Yes. Like I said, AF science behind BMD is bad. AF has said science behind BMD is good. Okay, dissad. Right. John says at some point that they need the counterplan to provide uniqueness for the dissad. Do we catch that he says this? Like, do we hear this? Okay, what does this mean? Yeah.
There's BMD now, which means we need to ban all BMD now, otherwise this has come.
Why is the dissad non-unique without the counter?
We got some mashers over here. I am not a masher.
Yeah. There are BMDs outside of the Arctic, right? So what is the tag to the linked card on the dissad? The first card on the dissad. There are only 2. Tag to the first one.
Wait, what's the attack button?
What are we doing?
Right.
No. Ada, yeah.
On the dissent,
Yeah.
BMD undermines strategic stability.
Fine.
Yes. There's a word right before BMD. Yeah. Yeah. But it's also possessing, right? Possessing BMD decreases strategic stability. So if the affirmative is correct, if anyone is correct, that exists now, then yes, we have to win the counterplan. We have to win the uniqueness counterplan in order for the dissad to be unique.
A B in the news.
Okay? What does it mean if the dissad is not unique? Louder. It doesn't apply. More specifically, the impact should happen. Yes. Okay. We'll only ask a couple more questions. John has 2 categories of answers on the dissad page. One is no link. A is empiric. B is there's a lot of mumbling. Savannah. Yes. Doesn't lead to reaction. Absolutely. Decades of builder proof. Okay. Second category of answers is no impact. Wonderful. What is the last argument that John makes on the counterplan? Oh, no. What is the last argument that John makes on the counterplan? Dispo is a voting issue. Why is he saying dispo is a voting issue? What did the 1 and C say? The counterplan was dispo. Yeah, so if he said condo, that would not apply. Oh, now we are missing Jared. That's my bad. Okay. Are there questions right now? Are we confused about things? It is okay if the answer is yes, they're going pretty speedily. Why do we think the 1 and C only read 2 short off case and then spent a bunch of time on case? What would be strategic about that? Yeah, Terrence.
A lot of the casework also works with the dissent, so it's like
Yes, there's a lot of things on the case that also apply to the dissad, potentially, or help the dissad. Good, what else? Owen, is your hand up? No. Yeah.
There's like 750 impacts for the defense.
Yes. There are a bunch of impacts to reading defense. Okay, and so in this case, they put all their eggs in one big off-case basket. Two big off-case baskets, but the kind of gives the dissad, right? So they can answer the app. Is there offense on the app?
Yes.
Yes. What offense is on the app?
Space,
Yes, that is what is flipped. Okay, there is one more. Are you ready, Jared?
I am. But if
Beautiful.
you have one more question than that.
No, it's okay.
Okay. All right, here's a doozy. It will be the counter plan. Advantage 1, freedom of action. Now here's the kicker. Advantage 3, golden dome. Advantage 2, air incursions. Yes. 1, 3, 2. I am the giver of the speech order. I can do whatever I want. Okay. Are my esteemed adjudicators ready? Okay. The counterpoint ends BMD, that's all uniqueness from the DA. Do both links in net benefit or severs and bans the plan. Interperms can nullify the effect of the plan. If so, neg on consumption, their interp delete ban the plan, which is illogical. Do the counterpoint severs voter for fairness justifies nullifying the plan. Last perm links in net Benny 1. Technical systems, even Intel gathering technologies negate strategic stability. Solid 19 enforced initial radars to be limited by bit this system expanded Russians. We're not concerned about what was the point today, rather what we signaled about the future, signaling an activist radar tracking tech. Automatic stability with Moscow defending against attack flies in the face of the MID, even limited intel systems. Threatened foreign nuclear capabilities. Gregor 19 Russia here. US may one day finesse the first strike capture ratio. We'll find it if we ignore sensors designed to frag coverage. That whole treaty carries risk. This will look like a first strike rather than an deterrence. Even small number of interceptors in the gas research species. Watching two open and this the potential to turn existing systems into future DMD automatic treaty stability. Destroy them is the only way to put the GD back in the battle. Star Trek 22 impact missile defense parity. This permanent doctrine of Russian nuclear creation. Missile defense invasion value inaccessible. Missile defense is to reduce nuclear parity. The CCA plus balance ruins deterrence. Solve 0% of the net benefit. It is the open-ended nature, not number of BMD technologies that cause Russian modernization possible. 19 the driver of Russian counter missile defense. This is open-ended. There's no indication of the possible end. We don't need the uniqueness counterplay to wave interceptors now aren't effective because China and Russia have credible duty to, but it doesn't matter since we are going for it. Now BMD fails. One killed vehicle, both versions use off-shelf hardware and in progress until 2032. Decoys defense can distinguish balloons rockets. The motors in class for more has 3 amperes, silver 20 test proven maximum rate is 50%, but could be as low as 0, dropping warrant. Instantly zeros the app assumption holds 19 national offense not effective simple design block quick produce effectiveness to 0 for epistemology rejecting the evidence of a history of lying in institutional culture. The prior to this is quick cash over safety that's anchored in lowest 5 offensive win. Missile defense doesn't work. This becomes offense. This system turns to insane dot track 70 purchasing interceptors. That's $50 million more for every estimate. The opposite of cost factor. One is capable of the job. And for reason inherited design, the next one can, and the next one. Now SBM solve all of it. There are required calculations for enemy coercion and prevent an adversary from strike 120 attack. The 23 destroy SBM's opportunity to launch precise attack from hundreds of warheads systems battle for any adversary with the exception of Russia. We develop scenarios which Russia targets US almost with all of its missiles in space. No missiles will survive more than 10,000 for each week. And this is not a real supply performance or findings over estimate damage Russia can do assume no failures touch or any other. The Russian attack left 109 in addition to 1,000 warheads, 1,000 by bombers. Remaining with all and all can be sufficient action cash rocket damage to Russia's war ability. Remaining land and the force be added for more hundreds of thousands of bomber weapons to provide an excellent deterrent against other adversaries or any rebuild Russian force. Now modernization works is wrong. It's pontificating about a hypothetical. The NGI doesn't exist yet. And the only source is the DoD. When it's the evidence is the DoD misrepresents data to the extent of pretending that 0% is 96 and that a success is relevant to MD. US 116 manufacturers show a decision to develop ICBM and prestige space launch, average space and other options, which is missile defense, reduce average space missiles. Convinced to forego developing a space defense would need to be factored GMD's for records and convincing a scarecrow was only factored because believed material missile defense does not work. Neither Iran nor no COVID dissuaded conducting flight tests for rockets 2 years after GMD since 10-5 launches similar to Iran developed between 2009 and 2015. There's no evidence GMD. It's just made missile defense development countermeasures are easy, was impossible. And then 18 words until classical equals attracting no co-run and rocket available tech chambers to the MBA of any efforts to deal with counters.
Funding was terminated and expertise was lost. Yes, epistemology and that their evidence is like Obama gifting Obama a medal. Their epistemology crowdite is from an admiral of the MDA who has an incentive to say their studies are good. The dispositionality is good. No counter-interdiction, so they can't solve their offense. It's necessary for Netflix. Grants us capable counterpoints but avoids contradiction. Solves afflections. They can straight turn DAs. Reasonability good is good enough. Substance tried out. Non-resolution theories arbitrary and illogical. The last BMD fails hard. Epistemology and still applies. Their evidence says that GMD has a better hit rate. That doesn't make it more threatening than ICMs. Not every test was designed to hit their target. It's like when a JDI said they could have been on varsity if they tried hard enough. Freedom of action. No deterrence collapse now. One, proportionality is wrong. U.S. is incredible. Second strike, subs and bombers are practically impossible to target because they can be anywhere in the world. The size of the U.S. second strike far outweighs most other nuclear states. Arsenal's missile defense veto doesn't overwhelm. That's warrant since adversaries are cooked if they decide first strike. Two, domain gaps are wrong. If mutual vulnerability is true, it's not reasonable war happens. Since both sides are disincentivized from intentionally striking double blind enemies are rational unless deterrable, then either retaliation or the possibility of overcoming missile defense all is about 10. That missile defense can compensate for the return slash roll first, and then enemy can be deterred will be by a counterattack vehicle consistent with a few weapons. Second, missile defense does deter rather discoverable retaliation that ensures that the enemies are rational enough to discover retaliation. Missile defense can intercept only some of the attack missiles, certain ways to deter the impaired question replies with denial of deterrence replies will derail. And now also flee the useless. This is clear. There's always a probability that one missile penetrates into single hit will cause unacceptable damage to the U.S. missile defense should change calculations with its enemies. The launcher list was not a theoretical argument about the nature of the launcher list. They dropped their no scenario or warrant for extinction listing Asia Pacific, biodine, climate change, dengue fever. Like you read an impacting defense file for the first time doesn't constitute a threat, and if missile defense self-deterrence without if missile self-deterrence without missile defense and defeats try or die, revisions is answered above on deterrence collapse now. Now, hedge fails because of Trump. He turns relationships into transactional. Some Trump sells out allies for a pretty penny. Makes trust in institutions impossible. That's Delaware. Tough love doesn't drift into turns. Burden sharing alienates our allies because they'll think the bar for self-sufficiency will just keep rising. Leaders acquiesce. And because Trump's unpredictable, which doesn't bode well for the rule of law, Iran doesn't prove anything. He struck nuclear facilities because he's advised by whack jobs who read too much macronig, not because of his deep love for Bibi. Now, the Golden Dome advantage, arms control fails. One, abuse. It goes the opposite direction. States say that they will control their weapons and then act the exact same way. INF coincided with weapons assault failed. ABM caused increases in nukes. If relations are distrustful and based on coercion, they'll continue to act aggressively. That's dodge. Two, adversary sheet. In the period similar to the future arms controls being difficult to see how the U.S. can return its freedom remains present. The Chinese government agrees transparency. In respect to fundamental success and weakness before Ukraine, not showing inclination violate, no social violate, and treaties. Chinese forces matter policy violate, foreign planning counters. The U.S. cannot expose the offender to U.S. forces, and the U.S. wouldn't get on board with the non-spilled political environment. Balance hurdles are controlled and however agreements concluded by the U.S. opponent of the limits of missile defense or accessible priority for China and Russia would be avoidable lightning round toxic and true arms control southern China, nor Russia polarization undermines U.S. tragedies or easy to access Trump safe fiction of Iran underscore the ease with which the presidency will withdraw from informal agreements. Lasers impact is insane. It's from a Del Monte CEO. They know about vegetables, not laser winter. Lasers burn out. They're ineffective disease defense. Can't target any missiles, and they can't be weaponized because their energy can get absorbed. That prevents existential impact. That's why tech measures can't get rid of rain. It cannot solve in time because it takes 50 years. Such as when you say you can have stable nuclear striking defense, such as regular weapons around. Capabilities out of the future system on likely to be dropped in the next 15 years, at least even from a small number of nuclear missiles used or lose it. The DA, the air incursions advantage. Bumpers. China has had years to send in waves of spy balloons. It's beaten by why hasn't your impact happened yet? And I'm not exaggerating, every internal link is from February 2023. Suspicious, it's right-wing moral panic about one spy balloon. It would also be the worst military strategy ever. It's the equivalent of look over there and hope the U.S. runs into the Wily Coyote wall. The people making decisions about Taiwan are not the people deciding to shoot at spy balloons. It's Indo-PACOM is halfway across the world, so it wouldn't make the world possible. No disease impact dispersal checks. It's impossible for a supervirus to reach Antarctic scientists, uncontacted tribes, and astronauts. Public health responses like social distancing and quarantine, other outbreak, transmission, and lethality. And trade-off is unovercomable in the lab because the scientists would immediately die while creating the virus. No geoengineering. The U.S. would occur in their backyard, so they would avoid causing regime suicide. China's disinterest in SRM and chooses less dangerous climate interventions. No grid extinction. It's segmented. No nuclear big enough to cover the grid. China's so small, and there's no incentive for them to counter for instance they seek for regional hegemony, not to invade the U.S. Pro concession is wrong. Our impact is about states who already have nukes. Going from 0 to 1 is hard and politically costly. Going from 1 to 1,000 is light work and still minimal reputational damage. Nuclear use is likely because of miscalculation and the security dilemma, even if there's no incentive to use them now. No China war. The war immediately stops China's global trade. It would be impossible to sustain because of weak aircraft carriers. And amphibious wave capability means they'll never have the ground force to sustain an invasion when the U.S. can just spam the reboot ban. Lack of BMD doesn't inhibit force modernization or GDP ratios. Nuclear deterrence is still credible with the second strike. Otherwise, China wouldn't have a credible arsenal to engage in a first strike because their missiles are less advanced and they have ineffective information. Only U.S. first strike from Wycliffe strike and retaliation does work. The U.S. is not counterforce multiple subs and bombers. No one knows when they come to port or air bases because they communicate in code. So the scenario is only first strike when the stars align. Chinese miscalc over card equally links to the plan if they don't believe that missiles are effective. So it's not net offense. It assumes that we have
have HTVs now, which we don't. And BMD wouldn't solve because it says that China would cause miscount in Japan, not the high forward. And BMD turn stability off applies here. No first strike impact. We're gonna have to do. Okay.
All right, are you ready for cross-ex?
Yeah.
Okay.
I am.
How can Russia be sure that the U.S. will never, ever, ever, ever in the future build a BMD?
How can Russia? Well, the durably fiated mandate of the counterplan would say we would never do it.
Okay, so the cards that are like, it's the open-ended nature of radars that make it threatening to Russia's second strike. Do any kinds of radars or missile interceptor systems exist after the counterplan?
The BMD radars now.
Okay. What about dual-use radars?
Possibly, but the degree to which they exist is far less, and the point of a uniqueness counterplan is that it generates like a substantial enough amount of uniqueness to make our DA exist.
Got it. And then just to be clear, the counterplane gets rid of the GMD, right?
Likely. Yes.
The biggest BMD system, yeah?
Yeah.
Does it get rid of Aegis ships with BMDs on them?
Get rid of Aegis ships. Is that homeland defense? Is homeland?
Yeah, they can be used for homeland defense.
No. I'll say no.
Okay. The arms control fails cards on the Golden Dome Advantage. The Miller card that says adversaries cheat says that Chinese conventional forces violate the code for unplanned encounters at sea, and that Russia violates basic norms of the international order. We can agree based on this card that those are revisionist actors.
No, we cannot agree.
Why not?
This is the novice question. I don't get it.
Well, but your card says that they contravene norms of the LIO on a regular basis.
The fact that they
They say
contravene
nothing
some
new.
norms does not mean that they are going to nuke the United States.
Yeah. We of course have to win our advantage. I'm just trying to establish we agree that these are evil revisionist actors.
No, we do not agree.
Okay, how can you possibly read this card then? The Chinese government views transparency and inspection as fundamental to weakness.
That does not mean that they are going to come in and nuke the United States. That is, even if they are revisionist actors, that would be a pretty ineffective means of displaying their revisionism.
Fair enough. Okay, the air incursions advantage. The China thumper is just that. I want to make sure I understand the argument that they've already surveilled the content of the U.S. Is that right?
That they have done it in the past. That's correct.
Understood. Thank you.
Wait,
The
before,
letter's been sent.
hold on,
Or you can ask a question.
sorry. Before EC goes, alright, we have a couple 2NC questions. Alright, why do we think that Jared did not take the disad and the 2NC? Okay. There are a lot of hints. Yes, I saw where you go. Yes.
It's like two cars for one car is not the same. Very short, so it's then
Okay, so this is only two cards. You can spend less time on it. I'm not. It's only two cards in the 1NC. Yes, because there was more to read on. Which ones?
Advantages 1 and 2.
Advantages 1 and 3. I think it's almost the inverse, right? How much did Jared say on advantage 1 and 3 versus advantage 2? Less. There's less happening on those pages. Yes, yeah. Yeah, great catch. Right? There's a little bit of offense on advantage 3. Okay? Alright. Just a couple more questions. Okay, so advantage 2. What is the argument? Let me find. Advantage 1, not advantage 2. Okay. One of the arguments near the beginning that Jared makes is basically miscalculation. Wait, I don't know if this is. Jared, what's the?
Where?
I wrote miscount self-deterrence without that's answer both. Missile self-deterrence without missile defense. Yes. Why do missile self-deterrence without missile defense? What is the argument that Jared makes? This group. What are we doing? First argument on advantage 1. What is it?
He's trying to back or trying to advance first.
Yes, but this group is here in the back. Okay? No deterrence left. Why? 2 reasons.
Trying to never fired him a little before.
Nope. First, okay. Collapse now. Yeah? No collapse now. What's the first reason? On advantage 1 at the top. There are numbers them. 1, 2. What's 2? Domain awareness. I think that's wrong. First one is proportionality. Kind of. Gotta make sure that we are paying attention. EC can go.
We're missing Graham.
Oh, EC cannot go. All right, while we're waiting for Graham, process of the 2 and C. Process of the 2 and C. John asks, counterclaim gets rid of D and D. Jared says yes. John says, does it get rid of Aegis ships? Jared says no. Why do you think Jared is asking these questions? Yeah, in the back.
Because the entire point of the thing is to ban DMD in like the homeland, so he was like determined whether or not the DMD ships like
Determining whether or not the BMD on the ships counts as the homeland. I'm not sure if it's the focus point is the homeland. Yeah.
Wait, can I revise my answer?
What?
You should say yes if that's the business.
Yeah, because it says ballistic missile defense.
Okay, it's not gonna make it.
Establishing the threshold for the
You're not
length of
saying
the
it
dissent. Yes.
Well, maybe.
I bet there is also another thing that they are going to say here, but you see.
The order is, I believe, the second advantage, air incursions, and then the disad, strategic stability.
Yeah, John. I realized the text said ballistic missile defense. I thought that.
John and Graham, are you both good?
Hold on, why are all our judges talking? You don't get to collude.
So John and Graham are both good.
Yes.
Hannah, are you good? Okay, cool. First strike impact. 1, China's headed few, they win strike first. 2, Russia fears starting a nuclear war approved by not crossing the red line. Ukraine. 3, nuclear sponge makes it impossible. Their card is wrong. It's about second strike, not seats. How can destroy Marcelo, which is impossible. say adversarial choose sides, it's circular hypothetical. It comes to conclusions they will strike because they will rationally makes it unlikely, and it doesn't take out our impacts about miscalc or and satellites now info gathering balloons are also ineffective because they are more effective by weather, but satellites generally gain more utility. But they need to send a terminal to LIO, Trump nukes to oxygen through ICU for executive. Yes, Trump is elected, but half the public die, you drive the plane's extinction. Swing voters didn't believe you called their insanity, and had Trump replies here explain on advantage one, ineffective and so many global problems. Public shaped by microeconomics rather than more than existential risk. So people care more about their wall than AI, nuclear war, climate change. That's Paula. Now it's the dissat. First, the security dilemma caused extinction. China, Russia, nuclear, Iran will combine forces to develop capabilities to overcome defensive systems, which spirals into war nuclear war that leads everybody in the news. News will first strike the assumption of immunity that's clues, and one outweighs one probability intervening action strike their impacts on institutions fail in security laws since every country's on their back. But two is time frame where impacts are long-term structure. The Golden Dome isn't real and won't be operational in decades. And three, in terms case, but 10. Missile defense is serious and double conclusion can be misled in believing that defense action working. They have a secure country by neutralizing threat of attack by being able to stake every secure aggressive policy in the absence of defense mistaken confidence led the Iraq and nuclear miscalc will be more costly, and BMD turns heads. Watch 20. BMD's agreement with alliance cohesion of both U.S. and allies share threat. They should understand the limitations of BMD. The emphasis on homeland defense and allies will receive this attention. Homeland defense is assigned to use retention and next, they say no link. Yes, link missile defense around strategic ability, building impenetrable missile defense cause adversaries to like the U.S. is negating their nuclear arsenal, so they must build new offensive capabilities to their own defense. That's our goal to include evidence and uniqueness is day one. No missile defense. U.S. Canada strategically rely on it now. The Golden Dome is a Trump impact project, but missile homeland defense is practically useless and so no way. Two, yes, evidence. Every card we read is about missile defense in this clue. That's why we read a uniqueness counter plan, but enough missile defense is ineffective. Countermeasures have yet to advance to cause a first strike, and missile defense cause food to develop the Sovereign Poseidon system. Federal 22. Putin claims missile defense was the evaluation of Russia nuclear forces of the U.S. is planning pursuing ballistic defense system and outlined in several new systems to counter U.S. missile defense, including Samurai, CBS, law attack, missile heads, super goal, the triggers, including the Poseidon nuclear tribute, that was common among the systems there. Features would make no sense from derivation of missile defense and Sama Operation Nuclear, Russian nuclear ASAT extinction, Shatter 24. So search nuclear ASAT does not threaten their true effects of explosion, be devastating, will destroy the grid, the grid collapse systems and everything, 90% of population from starvation. Russia then threatening attack for years over EMP, become the Russian theory of victory. This led to deploy them into WD not just all over the world. Russia announced its Samurai has an orbital capability over the South Pole, with words to be detonated as function of nuclear ASAT, orbital Samurai can be linked to Russian nuclear ASAT. And answer the costless super, they're wrong. One, trying to change, could have changed your doctrine, but that was response to homeland defense and increased modernization. Two, just do massive modernization, nuke weapons in the 21st centuries, and missile defense makes tremendous strikes on U.S. more likely low than 25. Golden Dome being more likely actions with launch preemptive strikes against U.S. and can rest behind this Golden Dome with the South Pole strike, our posture for preemptive strikes, drivers can around the U.S. escaping vulnerability. And the plan will cause U.S. first strike. U.S. will favor warfighting over diplomacy. Lewis and all 16 to deploy GMD to accept the capabilities of creatures that outweigh the benefits of overestimate capability to lead them to increase the risk of missile attack, overestimating the ability of GMD, while the individuals to pursue war aggressive policy in a crisis, increase risk of abstract launch missile. The U.S. is mistakenly the defense can counter such an attack, could escalate the crisis, increase the risk of nuclear warheads dying on U.S. territory, mistakenly the G's ineffectively can reduce incentive to pursue other purchases of balls, because the GMD naval instead of supporting the approach to strategic defense, increase the number of warheads aimed at the U.S. It's crucial to praise the GMD rather than supporting the defense uncritically. And they say no, just lose it. It's wrong. What doesn't matter for impact coordinated strike on the U.S. or miscalculated war from black describing both go to nuclear and not require regime suicide. Two, recent tech advances circumvent defense body. 21. Powers employ the cable systems for decades without escalation. Carnegie and Massa, although the co-location raises the risk of escalation against threats against CNC, could undermine deterrence, redundancy, and eliminate creating strength to strike versus low risk. There's a high payoff. In conflict with NATO strike, strike Russian forces can destroy nuclear assets. How should potentially lead the world of Russia would understand not necessarily the strategic attack of your surprise engine escalation and nuclear forces are brought over states around cooperation and design necessarily become natural. If accidentally affect nuclear forces, is spiral making extreme and credible counterforce capability of its past escalation. Tolerance 21. In any campaign, the U.S. is likely to destroy ground-based raiders in the air defenses, predicting Chinese conventional forces doing so. The great quarters in which the U.S. could attack on China's use of the overall picture may not be coming on China's attacks on the theater forces and bases in infrastructure aggregation EW and air defense. Chinese might think Washington has aimed beyond the war. Beijing interprets it version of the forces of destroy nuclear deterrent. It might see limited escalation as a woman force and China can use nukes for Carter nukes and chalk is wrong. History is not love, not skill, index accents, not work with the communication method, which is our zero. Next, they say deterrence. It's wrong. One, if we went in zero is the case, assume the adversaries are determined by a critical second strike, which exists in the scope. Two, all two evidence on the harmonized here. And next, they say no nuclearization fade. Yes, impact the episodes contain those institutes that show missile events. And they don't, and we don't need to just one example of new tech to overcome MD. Next, they say missile shield. BMD fails on the other page, answers missile shield. And they say rational equals out. No deterrence, lose all 16. Nuclear run China urges those who small amount of counterforce on the U.S. and said they target U.S. cities missile events of well because U.S. would remain and intelligence capability the primary factor in deterring the necessity of U.S. response to the U.S. missile defense makes no difference compared with the U.S. offensive nuclear forces. Some argue nuclear the U.S. may remember retaliation shower nuclear missiles to target cities and not credible to match U.S. retaliating. It's really American retaliating by missile events. They considerable Chinese nuclear theory being I'll go back.
like 1 NC's happening right here, then our 2 ACs start right here. Okay, if our answer was yes, what did we do with the overview? We flowed it right next to the no link arguments, correct? That gets things a little bit out of whack. So, when you see, when I was flowing, John got to the disad, and he said, 1 no link. I've got about this much space here at the top. And this is about how much space the overview took. Yeah? And then we have no link, yes link. Pretty well lined up here. It gets a little out of whack as we get a little bit further down. But that's always going to happen. The best that you can do is to leave a little bit of space for yourself. If you're doing it on your computer, you can insert cells. Obviously, that is a little bit easier. But 2AC should not start the first substantive argument at the top of the page. Right? EC says, which 2 of the 3 parts of impact calculus? Probability and time frame. And then what is the point 3? It turns the case. What about the case does it turn? Say a letter again. One of them is hegemony. The second one, right, is BMD. I guess we can't see this. But the second one is BMD turns hegemony. Do we get the warrant for the first one? Yeah.
Isn't the Iraq War like nuclear version because like reckless driving?
Yes. Yep. So say it louder. So everyone can hear.
It causes reckless driving and like a nuclear version of the Iraq War.
Reckless driving. Yes. So it means, right, if we know that there are safety systems in place, it doesn't matter as much what we do. Right? We play a little fast and loose. Maybe it makes the impact more likely. Yeah? Okay. EC says, yes, link. And then answers the 2 arguments, right, that John has made on the no link portion. Correct? When do we go to the impact portion? What is the first argument that I would flow as the impact, like as answers to no impact? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, sure. What is the first thing that EC answers on the impact bit from the 2AC? So you can also look at A subpoint for no impact in the 2AC. What is A subpoint for no impact in the 2AC?
Thank you.
Loud. We're not sure. 2AC, John says no impact. I labeled them A, B, C, but John said 1, 2, 3. What is 1? He said cross apply what? Yeah. Yeah, louder. Yes. No, use it or lose it. Okay? So, if I flipped my paper, was when EC got to use it or lose it. And EC answers each of the 4 subpoints. Why are we talking to each other? EC answers each of the 4 subpoints in order. So, use it or lose it. We have a set of responses here, right? We have 1, 2, 3, 4 things that are said. There are 2 numbers. Okay? What is the second argument? Look at 2AC to the disad. What is number 2 under no impact? Yeah. Deterrence holds. Perfect. So EC says deterrence works. Okay? Says all these examples from the 2 and C matter. What is number 3? We felt really confident about flowing after the 2AC, it seemed like, and I'm not sure if we are just not talking or we just acted like we understood what we did. Okay? What is number 3 on the 2AC? Yes, no space nukes. Okay? Last thing the EC says is answer to number 4, which is what? It's answering what 2AC argument. What is the argument that John made is number 4 that EC is like, actually, yes. Yeah, rationality. Yes. So, what EC has done is has answered every subpoint from the 2AC and has done so in order. What do we call this? Line by line. If we flowed the 2AC well, then that makes flowing the 2AC much easier. Understanding the 2AC much easier.
Go on, Doc. In my speech, I will be talking about advantage 1, freedom of action. Advantage 2, air incursions. Advantage 3, golden dome. The counterplan, the DA. One more time, advantages 1, 2, and 3, then the counterplan and the DA. Is anyone not ready? Headshot outweighs its sparks nuclear land grabs in Asia, Europe, Africa, and South America, overturning checks on conflict and enabling battlefield deployment of TMWs to go nuclear. Conventional conflict alone ends the species by inhibiting institutional response to rogue superintelligence or asteroids. They make a triad for the LAO, dropping revisionism zeros for the DA states, arm up to power maximize not in reaction to others. Chinese and Russian appetites for land and plunder demonstrate express intent to redraw the map in their favor. That's a thinking insurance collapses now. Cross-blood retail from advantage 2, answering here 1. US does not have to be counterforce portable. China threatening the homeland is enough to force surrender since America doesn't want to take the chance BMD solves insulating the free world. It doesn't link direct this driving BMD shield, encourages reason and time response out of DA2 proportionality, means US counter-reliant ICBMs to ensure the only choice is to dump the arsenal, surrender, overrun the defense, battery 0 for limited homeland strikes that force surrender and defeat complete that's costly subs, and bombers can't stop the initial strike, which is all an adversary needs to secure victory, that also zeros mutual vulnerability since US response options are proportional to the threat. If US calls for blood, goods, nuclear from American audience costs, it's our generation's Pearl Harbor. That's outbreak, it doesn't link to the plan since we stopped the initial threat in which issuance 3. Rationality is Athens, irrational to rely on uncertain response from the US. It is perfectly logical to accept the uncredible risk of US nuclear strikes. Remember, the SWO is BMD and we haven't been attacked yet. Yes, extinction Beckley says Asia and Europe war causes tactical nuclear deployment, killing board, and calls deterrence failures, quote, existential neg defense is equally unwarranted. Deterrence stable does not answer revisionism. We agree evil countries can be rational, but weakness counts aggression. Reading those states have internal factors that make them likely to pounce on weakness. Out explains why states modernize and will go to war. Zeros the DA. Trumpers wrong. 1. Tough love isn't selling out allies if they don't meet the Dawn's conditions for American goodwill. Unpredictability also enhances deterrence since allies will err on the side of US interests. 2. Truancy Iran answers concede deep institutional love for hegemony. The US will go down fighting but won't win without BMD. Advantage air incursions, not going for spy balloon impact. Concede thumpers, concede democracy fails, try enough insurance, concede bioweapons and geoengineered defense. China defense doesn't answer advantage 1. Russian, North Korean, and Iran land grabs 2, but it's wrong 1. Conversion circumvents trade blowback from invasion says they don't have to fight to take Taiwan, win blow their economy. 2. Cross-fly retail interest can't prevent China from moving on Taiwan. 3. Funds we do. Did they read that card? China just what? No. First strike defense doesn't answer advantage 1 since adversaries never have to take the risk of actually striking. The opportunity cost of taking Taiwan or assault by coercion. China doesn't have to fight to keep it if they can force everyone to back down, which frees up resources for elsewhere. Golden dome advantage. Arms control works. Every truancy normative is AF 1. Abuse can be only be prevented by bargaining chips, which they concede effective BMD enables 2. Same with cheating. Russia and China they violate because the US has no enforcement mechanism. The plan provides that, and these cards concede revisionism. 3. The US gets on board. Trump is a deal maker and will strong arm Republicans in Congress. Now, I get it. Dems will agree to limit the golden dome. Dropped impact. Arms control establishes hotlines between enemy states through a backstop of war. Conceded it solves the stability. DA concede lasers impact. No. Use or lose will be on the DA. The counterplan. BMD works. 1. Key kill vehicles were modernized and fast-tracked post 2022. It's not hypothetical tests or closely scrutinized by independent agencies like Dow 2. Homeland defense is layered, which inhibits the decoys and cloud cover. Fundamental is pre-mod, which screened out James will attack with encrypted and hardened satellite systems. 3. Appearance fail and no presumptions. Not all tests were meant to hit the missile. 4. Missile tests are epistemically sound. Outside overseers minimize overlook failures and establish independent testing procedures. Down is statutorily barred from defense industry influence, and neg authors are equally paid off by Chinese autocrats. 5. No offense. BMD deters even if it doesn't work, since adversaries must claim for the worst. And that's the Glacio Lewis's scarecrows retort the powerful, but warrantless BMD presence is dissuasive. 5. ICBMs failed. US wouldn't use them post issuance of a coercive threat, since it going first makes the homeland vulnerable. Can't solve it. Advantage 1. DA. Case outweighs 1. Probability. No conflict in history started by accident, but revisionist aggressors received too little pushback. Ignited both world wars. Intervening actors is a cardless assertion. 2. Magnitude and terms case. BMD removes the incentive to launch first, since there would be no utility to a nuclear strike. At worst, their nerves are one-shot tactical nukes. The amount of interceptors. No combined strike. Effective. BMD solves it. This is defense at fast because it proves adversaries have revisionist intent. No time frame. Revisionists are waiting in the wings. Step probe to resolve, and the gold dome will be funded by the end of the week. turn, building BMD satiates the appetite of the Warhawks, time 25, going to a peace dragon, show each other, insane appetites of Warhawks, who support for series peace, massive, and make fresh project complete to something to the, and make community, IMIC, associated with difficult conflict, no impact, and term BMD provides a safety net, console 22, criticism, US Home Defense Zone, expand regional options for the spreading all strengths like so many systems for 381, rise in assumption, US performance is building, chance stress case, trade skill, means analysis, something to do, something just make cavalier, no, turns case, BMD, setup for assurance, console 22, for, like the cruisers, villages, will read, and American space, stuff to do, the less loss, like they do, take this, residents in the national interest, tradition, and a million chance, Alice, perceived as much credible than by infinity missile defenses. BMD is not responsible for mod. This answers every impact. 1. History. America started building out missile defense in 2003, which touched off an arms control renaissance, not modernization. The plane might be more effective, but history is clear. There's no one-to-one correspondence between missile defense and mod. 2. It's propaganda. Russia and China modernize for prestige and offense. They exaggerate the role of interceptors to demonize the West. That's cross-out and cross-sex. Their Federal card just cites Putin's quotes. That's not a reliable source. No crisis instability. 1. Impurix. America had a first strike ability against the Soviets, China, and NATO with no preventative wars. That's cross-out and cross-sex. 2. It's irrational. Their scenario requires states to start a nuclear war out of fear of nuclear war and fighting the outcome. It's designed to avoid. That's creating no tech advances. This court is a rant about entanglement and it presupposes use it or lose it. Deterrence doesn't take up the case. It only works for the safety net of missile defense. No preemptive strikes. Use it or lose it applies. Defense applies to adversaries. Well, wait and see if PMD is built before the risk nuclear response of the U.S. No space impact and science fiction. Fiction equally susceptible to MBD. These capabilities don't exist. That's holdings. There's no incentive to attack satellites because everyone uses them.
Right. Woo. How are our hands? We're not pulling fast enough. Okay.
My fault.
Oh no, it's not your fault. Okay. So, Graham Whiskey says, no BMD modernization. BMD doesn't cause modernization. Right? He says this answers fill in the blank. I did not write it, so you had to be listening. Answers impacts. Answers how many of the impacts? All of them. He's like, no BMD causing modernization, or BMD not causing modernization. Answers all impacts.
It's a lie, by the way.
You don't say that. You didn't say that. I didn't mention that. Okay, what are the two reasons? What are the two warrants? BMD does not cause modernization. One is loud. Someone said it. History. Yes, perfect. Okay. 2 is propaganda. Yes. What card does Graham extend under propaganda? What? Process. What card? Say louder. Cosmo. Right? It is a safe bet regardless that it might be a Cosmo card. Okay? What is the argument that he makes after no BMD causing modernization? He says no something else. Crisis instability. Good. Okay. Oh, sorry. Alright, what do we notice about the order on the counter plan when he gets there? What does he not extend? Permutations, yes. So where does he start? Oh, we had a couple answers. What were they? BMD words, yes. Warrant 1 is kill vehicles. Yes, good. Okay, does he just jump to the middle of the 2AC as he does this? Other than the permutations? Is he just like, BMD works. Let me extend a random thing to the 2AC? No, he goes in 2AC order. Okay, so 2AC, 2AC says, epistemology is wrong, right? We've talked about that one. Okay? Graham says, epistemology of what? This sound. Yeah, app research. Don't overthink it. App research is sound empirically. Okay? And the character authors are equally paid off. What does that mean? Yeah.
Everybody's pockets.
Everybody's pockets. Their authors are equally paid off. why does he spend so much time on advantage 2, even though, what does he do? He's mostly kicking it, yeah? He's kicked advantage 2. Why does he spend so much time on it anyway? So much time, right? Not that much time. Someone we haven't maybe heard from is him. Yeah. Yes, so they can't use it as offense in the 2 and R. So, Graham says, right? We're not going for it. He concedes what? Thumpers. Good. Yep. Democracy, impact, defense. And bioweapons. Good. What does he do after that? Yes. He says, he works through the rest of the arguments and he says, the other things on this page do not take out our advantage 1 or 3. He says you can, first strikes, right, does not answer advantage 1. Why does he have to say this? Why does he have to say first strikes does not take out advantage 1 on advantage 2, even though he's kicking it? Louder, Destiny. Yes. So they can't say they conceded this offense. Cross apply it to advantage 1. Takes out the impact. The end. Right? He has to hedge. He has to close all the doors. We don't leave hanging offense. We don't let them cross apply things. Jared might try to do that anyway, right? Might say, like, Graham's wrong. Does, in fact, take it out. Here's why. But if Graham didn't preempt it, we give Jared's arguments more weight. Yeah? Okay. Why do we think they kicked advantage 2? Out of all of them. Yeah. The neg spent a lot of time on it. Yeah. So, ink, sure. You said the impacts aren't as strong as the others? Okay, I like that. Why? What about, how much time did we spend kind of making fun of this advantage a little bit in like cross-X and it's weather balloons, yeah? Yeah, so it's not even just that the impacts aren't as strong, but perhaps they are less confident in the internal link arguments or internal link chain on advantage 2. Right? Maybe they think there are places, the internal links on the other advantages, the impacts on the other advantages, wherever they are stronger. Right? So the combination of ink plus that maybe informs that decision. What impact does it seem like the 2AR will want to go for? Base? Based on 1AR extensions and time allocation. Poll. Deterrence collapse equals nuclear war. They probably will say that. What is the thing that Graham said outweighs? I hear like the word a little bit. Hedge collapse outweighs. Yes. Right? So they, at the top advantage 1 is right before they say deterrence collapse. So you're right, Cole. That the deterrence is collapsing now. We've got 1, 2, 3. All right? 1, 2. They all correspond to the 2AC arguments. Yep. Okay. Jared, are you?
I've been doing front.
Oh, okay, cool.
Oh,
Wonderful.
We have two, so.
Not all scripted, evidently.
Yeah, we didn't script it.
that's right.
Yeah, I know.
Our oral forms.
Okay. My panel is the DA, power plant, 1, 3.
that one more time.
The DA, the counter plan, one, oh, sorry. Freedom of action, and that golden dome.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to get the order in case I.
Are we all good? Okay. Reckless striving outweighs. The U.S. is just a shot away from planetary extinction. Hubristic leaders become trigger-happy in a crisis by overestimating defensive success that causes American first strike and adversary nuclear retaliation. Because the U.S. will never choose to go to the negotiating table. War is declared. Battle comes down. The world explodes in nuclear oblivion. That's truth. Lewis, but our impact is more probable. Intervening actors have warrants, which is that provisions. Actors won't trust U.S. institutions, so they will never engage in arms control or care about hegemony at all. Revisions who doesn't turn our DA or make it inevitable. Even if they modernize, they can be rational, which was the cross-text from its end. Our scenario is about U.S. first strike. It does not remove the incentive to strike first. It increases the incentive because the U.S. has a defensive shield to defensive shield to operate with impunity. Now, other missiles are not popped up by interceptors. They're unreliable. Missile defense can be everywhere, and they commonly fail, which is the other page. The DA is more likely that a revision strikes. We can't shore up hedge, and we have defense in terminal because the LIO is ineffective at solving every other global problem. Conceded premise of the golden dome advantage way the grounds wouldn't go nuclear because the U.S. has no incentive to intervene. But a U.S. first strike can inspire retaliation, which makes the DA innately higher magnitude. The plan turns hegemony. Homeland defense is perceived as a sign of abandonment because the attention seems like we're leaving our allies behind. That's why the U.S. will choose to strike first. The leaders will overestimate the value of GD, which causes aggressive policies in a crisis, causes nuclear retaliation. Policymakers who think that GD will work will choose to believe they're impenetrable. Yes, combined strike doesn't matter because we're not going for that scenario. But if we win some risk of that to link story, that is equally defense to their deterrence swap scenario, since it proves that the plan also causes an adversary nuclear strike. Golden Dome satiates the warmark start. It's a one-liner. Does not say that they will satiate a future. They will see a need to provoke a conflict because they will innately believe that they will be able to survive the conflict, so they'll choose to use nuclear strikes in the future, even if they don't immediately. So our warhawks only have a limited time frame of satiation. The causal evidence does say that it provides an alternative for a preemptive strike, but not that those adversaries will actually use it, which is the premise of our reckless driving scenario, which is that our readers will believe that they can act with impunity in terms in cases. It's also offense without defense because they do not have any impact against U.S. first strike. Now, modernization turns advantage. One, strategic instability makes adversaries more likely to develop nukes because they fear that missile defense is a sign that the U.S. wants to strike first. You have to touch on one of the evidence is they have direct correlation that Russia would trade BMD for the Solar which is in the 1 hour use or lose it, and does not take out a reckless driving impact, which is about U.S. first use, yes, use or lose it, eliminating reduction of modernization, automatic nuclear deterrence. It creates incentives to strike first in a crisis command and control systems are more vulnerable than ever, so adversaries think by striking those bases, they would be able to overcome the numerical advantage of nuclear weapons. Responding with China would think that striking air bases and Guam would prevent the nuclear strike, which ensures deterrence collapse inevitably. Now, the uniqueness counterplan advanced BMD does fail first with technology. They've dropped that their authors are hacks and overestimate the value of BMD. Their only warrants was that NEG authors are equally paid off by Chinese autocrats with no warrants, just claim. And we have evidence from professors who describe how their studies are all false. Even if BMD fails because they can be equal, they can't distinguish between balloons or missiles or anything else. The way your homeland defense is easily overcome by shooting a ton of stuff into the air so that the ballistic missile defenses work, drop their countermeasures, work hard, that the NBA abandoned trying to solve decoys, and that they only even attempt to divert North Korea and Iran so they cannot solve any other impact like Russia or China offense. They drop that interceptors are ineffective because most of them work in any design flaw, zeros the possibility, so preventing any risk of defense through the BMD fail stuff above, then they have no hegemony impacts. It denies the usefulness of BMD at all. Okay, freedom of action. Hedge thumper truce. Trump will Trump selling out Ukraine and invading allies for transactionalism proves that he will never be able to effectively shore up American hegemony. Besides, it's only Mac wrote it. It says that Trump is a nice guy. He's trying to get a position in his office, which is why he writes all this stuff. It does not mean that Trump is actually going to be kind to everyone and solve hegemony. They jumped to LIO. The democracies fail at solving impacts card from the other page, that they're unable at responding to threats like climate change or pandemics or anything like that. So solving the LIO does not make anything possible. Proportionality, ICMs, subs, bombers, ICMs all make a first strike on the U.S. impossible because they would fear nuclear retaliation and response to a crisis. Golden Dome advantage. Arms control fails, takes out the hotlines, impact critical items. If adversaries are revisionists, there's no reason that they would come to the table, even if they're rational and would do so, even though that they're revisionist. It proves that they would not strike first, which is defense their own advantage.
504.
Did we give you permission to speak?
Okay, so what do you do as judges after the 2-R happens? You don't just like chill and, talk to your friends. You're judging a debate. Okay, what ought you, or what do you think judges should be doing after the 2-R occurs? Madison.
Checking their flows.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. So 2-Rs oftentimes do not contain much, if any, evidence. And so Jared talked pretty fast for a pretty long time. So there's a chance that I wrote something intending to come back to fill it in, and I might spend that time coming back and filling it in. Good? What else? If you are the 2 in, and you sit down from a 2-R, what are you usually thinking about? What is crossing your mind? Joelle. What? The way that the AF can win. Are we listening to the things that are being said? Yeah? Okay. The way that the AF can win. So the judge, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. What do you think you're winning on? Do you think that you were right about these things? Do you think, are you worried if the judge calls for cards? Anything like that. So, as judges, you are generally doing the same thing. Okay? As you are looking at the 2-R often versus the 1-AR, maybe versus the block, right? To see, do you think the 2-R conceded anything important? What do you think the 2-AR will do? What could they do? What options do they have? What is the thing that they need to say to win the debate? So instead of talking to your friends for the next 3 minutes of prep, I want you to, on the back of maybe a bandage too, honestly, but on either an extra paper or the back of a paper, I want you to write what you think the 2-AR should do. What do you think John should go for? What is the argument that he should make against reckless driving based on 1-AR 2AC? So if you were the 2A, what do you do in this scenario? This is not a phone a friend assignment.
I love you, Easy Power.
Thank you, Camp Director Asia.
So, ask the question there. No.
What?
My speech will be beginning on the freedom of action advantage, then moving on to the Golden Dome advantage, touching on the counterplan, and concluding with the strategic stability VA. I like it. Is everybody ready? All right, here we go. If you vote nay, get ready to learn Chinese. Buddy, hegemony collapse outweighs American weakness, fights adversarial aggression against U.S. allies, and egg ballot instantly greenlights Russian and Chinese coercion to force U.S. troops out of South Korea, Estonia, Germany, Japan, allowing Putin, Xi, and Kim to steamroll their neighbors, redrawing the map in imperial visions, pushback guarantees the war of Russia, and China rely on battlefield nuclear capabilities to quell dissent and rule with an iron fist. Fighting back sends the world to Davy Jones's locker. Conventional conflict will destroy civilization. Early collective institutions, regulating AI, climate, pandemics are all gone. Russia and China, led by personalist leaders who only care about their power, not collective well-being, dropping revisionism zeros. The DA, Russia, and China build up their capabilities not because they fear the U.S., but because they are power maximizing, which guarantees the U.S. gets involved in nuclear conflicts without BMD, Homeland Defense. No Trump thumper. He does not abandon allies. He just saved Israel from destruction and sent a signal worldwide that he's ready to defend them from threats. Tariffs and rhetoric are bluster, not actual policy. Even if he's a moron elsewhere, burden sharing shores up defense, which means that Trump is net good for hegemony. Your authors eat food too. Matt Cronin might want to spot his administration, but he's also a PhD professor at Georgetown who is subject to peer review. All of their arguments about democracies failing as well are relevant because cooperation between countries can still solve even if democracies do not. Deterrence fails now. One, the U.S. cannot rely on nuclear weapons to deter adversaries. The neg would have you believe that our choice between dumping our entire arsenal and conceding is totally, perfectly okay. That's not how it works in the real world. Surgical strikes on single U.S. cities like Detroit are a cost too high for U.S. warplane or subs and bombers are useless if the U.S. cannot get them off the ground. In addition, nuclear retaliation is insufficient for smaller coercive threats that would convince the U.S. to back down. The Golden Dome advantage. Concede that arms control fails. I am not going for the counterplay. Okay, this debate is totally irrelevant about whether or not BMD works. You do not have to even look at this to resolve the debate. BMDs are political deterrents. Adversaries might not think BMD works, but they still have to worry about it. They aren't willing to risk their countries on a coin flip. Remember, the neg counterplane gets rid of that coin flip and just gives up Taiwan and Eastern Europe. Remember, they're going for an impact that relies on America believing in the power of BMD, so this argument has no utility for the 2NR. Either way, their warrants are wrong. Epistemology is ridiculous. The Government Accountability Office oversaw the testing that all our authors based their arguments on and concluded that they were good to go. They are statutorily required to be honest and impartial, and your authors are probably paid off too because they are subject to the incentives that come with being paid to do work. Countermeasures fail. BMD can screen them out. Since one BMD system fails, another one can mop them up as they cross the sky. They say that any design flaw zeroes the app. We've answered all of their warrants, so there is no chance you're voting on presumption. It should be try or die for hegemony. Disadvantage. All right, the negative team has dropped an argument that instantly zeroes the TA. They thought they were slick, not going for the normal impact. They still have to answer our no-link arguments. BMD has been around forever, and no U.S. president has ever thought, I think it's a good idea to start a nuclear war today. That's ridiculous. It makes no sense. Either way, there's zero chance of a reckless driving impact. We have two huge link turns to it. One, satiating war hawks. Building out new missile defense is a shiny object for the military-industrial complex. It quite literally keeps them too busy to push for a war with adversaries. This is a tactical concession. The 2NR said nothing meaningful about it, and this is part of the next card doc will be blank. Two, no first strike incentives. Importantly, they have fully dropped the Allies' warrants. American leaders already have an incentive to avoid actually following through on a first strike threat because it would reduce Allied population centers to ash. America obviously does not want to expose Seoul or Berlin to a mass retaliatory strike. There's no shot that BMD can remove this disincentive since Homeland Defense protects the continental U.S., not allied publics. That matters. America has spent 70 years building up an alliance system, deliberately putting an ally on the line in a nuclear fire would shred 3/4 of a century of U.S. foreign policy work, which is our causal evidence. There's also a backup warrant. Having missile defense shield actually makes a first strike less likely because it makes American leaders confident America's nukes won't be destroyed by a preemptive attack. The neg even claimed that China wouldn't be tempted to nuke Guam. Missile defense means the presidents aren't forced into a use it or lose it dilemma. It puts a break on escalation. It means that in a crisis scenario, the president doesn't have to choose between launching nuclear weapons and seeing their country destroyed. They can rely on BMD to give them more time to think about an appropriate response to the situation, which removes reckless driving. Can't turn case one. Allies like BMD BMD. The reason is that it ensures the U.S. can get involved in a foreign conflict. This is the thesis of our first advantage. The U.S. needs BMD to ensure it can deter adversaries. That shores up allied assurance. 2, nothing about Homeland Defense makes allies think that we are retrenching. To the contrary, it signals a willingness to defend the international order and come to our allies' aid when they are in times of need. All of the rest of the 2-hour warrants of returns case are just at the end result. If we win our linked defense argument, or that the U.S. will not intervene in other countries, then it means they can't access those turns case arguments, because just because their disadvantage might get to a war that blows up the world doesn't mean that the case does not outweigh.